Hey, we've got the crossover here, Coach Retzlaff and Chev. We are bridging formats, breaking ADP, and crossing over into Dynasty. All right, these games inform each other. They should not be just in isolation. So, Chev, I'm going to talk about George Kittle to start off on Underdog, FFPC, FastDraft. Underdog, tight end 3, round 4, goes George Kittle. He goes near on Underdog, Omarion Hampton, Cortland Sutton, Travis Hunter, Jalen Hurts. So you have to make a decision there. What position? You have a lot of flexibility. Early informs late there on Underdog. Now in FFPC, at the 2-3 turn, it's 1.5 for tight end scoring. You've got Chase Brown in that range, T. Higgins, who we were talking about pre-show, 11 games last year, went off at the very end, though. He was winning you leagues. Rashee Rice, there's another guy we talked about pre-show. Kyren Williams, Garrett Wilson. We love Garrett Wilson. On FFPC in the last week for George Kittle, the min pick has been 16. So as early as round 2, and then as late as pick 30 in round 3. That's the range there. On FastDraft, pick 42 at the beginning of round 5. This is from the Rabbit contest that we just launched for FastDraft. Use that code promo CROSS. And there's 100% rostership, of course, right? So in Dynasty, with George Kittle, Chev, I am buy now for a win now team. And I would even say George Kittle holding in a 2-year rebuild into age 32 season that he's heading into. I like him up to the age of 35. Tight ends can age like fine wine, especially if they're not focused on Taylor Swift at the tail end of their career. So give me some George Kittle in all these pockets. You can get him. He's appealing in the best ball streets, but also in Dynasty. We had a startup that we had 1.7 scoring for tight ends. So I went Bowers with round 1. A couple rounds later, I snuck in some George Kittle. I'm trying to get advantage at that position. Chev, you've got a guy that you like, a little younger, Tyler Warren.
Now, I love everything that you just said about George Kittle, because everything that you just said about George Kittle could be true about Tyler Warren. Now, keyword could is doing a whole lot of heavy lifting here. So we're talking about tight end 10, round 11, several rounds later. And this is purely a bet on his skill set. So we're talking about him in the 11th round as a player who got high draft capital. He's a first round selected tight end. Pick 14 goes to the Colts. Now, we know, and as we've seen, the Podfather is a diabolical Anthony Richardson hater. He aligns perfectly with you in that fact. And so we're hoping for a Daniel Jones renaissance that'll boost, rising tide lifts all boats, or lifts all Colts, however you want to look at it. So Daniel Jones lifting the passing game up, which then in turn leads to more of a target ceiling for a guy like Tyler Warren. They've alluded to being able to use his rushing prowess as well. If you know anything about Tyler Warren's college film, he's a Swiss Army knife. He's able to be used, took snaps at quarterback, took snaps out wide. He was the goal line back for different pieces. And this is on a team with 2 NFL running backs and potentially the first overall pick in 2026 in Drew Aller. So Tyler Warren is a unique talent, and I would like to make that bet. He's going the exact same range that Brock Bowers was last year. Brock Bowers entered into an impossible situation with the Oakland Raiders, and that's why people were fading him as one of the most talented tight ends of all time. You can pretend like you weren't. We all weren't as high on on Brock Bowers as we should have. I feel like that same thing is happening right now with Tyler Warren. So in Dynasty, he's a 5th round pick. He's currently the tight end 4. He's in any tight end premium, he's a 5th round pick. Tight end 4 on Roto Underworld, PlayerProfiler.com. So with this, I can't stop myself from clicking the button in best ball. Now let's talk about FFPC. FFPC, he's being drafted anywhere from round 6 to round 10. Now, I have a question to pose to you, brother. Now, you're on the clock.
Yep.
You've got to make a determination in an FFPC draft between Bo Nix, Ricky Pearsall, Tucker Kraft, or Tyler Warren. Where does your mind take you just off the cuff right here?
Hey, off the cuff, I immediately think I've got Bo Nix. Did I get RJ Harvey earlier? Do I have an opportunity at Cortland Sutton? Am I stacking? If I have some Denver share along the way, I love selecting Bo Nix right there. So 1-1 in a vacuum, player-wise, this is more of a team build question, but it's a great question. Then you had mentioned Tucker Kraft. I know you're very high on Tucker Kraft. 2 weeks last year as he tied in 1 overall. Already a vet, already a guy who has proven it and is on the way ascending. One thing, though, about Tyler Warren, you had mentioned his Swiss Army knife, over 200 rushing yards last year. Where do we see that from a tight end? We saw a little bit. I mean, what has Chigo Okonkwo done that just a little bit? Guys who can move around in the formation. This is somebody who I always wanted to have RPOs because he's filthy. We saw what Jonnu Smith did last year, so I feel vindicated there. But to your point, Tyler Warren, just a great player, and I would love to select him in that range as well. I think it's worth taking a shot. And what's cool is it's front end Tyler Warren, back end, you can back end stack so many other Colts. If it's AD Mitchell, Alec Pierce, and then you have the quarterback conundrum, you can select who you like. And I did select some Anthony Richardson today. I did break down and had
No way.
a little bit of
no way.
Yes,
There's no way that you actually clicked the button on Anthony Richardson. It's not possible.
I did. It happened, and he and Jones were there neck and neck. So again, process play. You have to swallow your pride and go towards a little bit of the variance in the outcome. We talked about pre-show. You could be right, but then there's range of outcomes. And another player, Ken Walker. I've been out on Ken Walker as a take. I don't see it going where everybody wants for ceiling, but I love the skill set. He's Nick Chubb, who can catch passes, 46 receptions, 11 games last year, solid player. And there's a chance that it does work out, and I don't want to miss that. So I am getting exposure there. Who was the fourth player? You had mentioned Bo Nix, Kraft, Warren. Who was the fourth player that was mixed up
Ricky
in there?
Pearsall, Slick Rick the Ruler.
Especially with that 1.5 tight end premium, I'm going to go for Tyler Warren in that situation. Not really adept at selecting Ricky Pearsall there. I would actually go Juwan Jennings a little bit earlier. Hey, you got to swallow your pride. Brandon Ayuk, I have him as a buy. We talked about it on Trade Gods, but now it's just sitting here in these best ball streets. I'm going to let that price drop on Brandon Ayuk because we get new information. He's really not looking like he's going to be good for maybe even the first half of the season. So I'll slow the brakes there and let my exposure just lower, and then it's less of a hit, and then I still have an opportunity with him with the teams I already have built.
Right.
Like that. Where are you at on George Kittle?
Kittle for me is kind of an auto. I mean, it's an auto select. So it's everything that you get from the top two tight ends in Trey McBride and Brock Bowers, but you get it wrapped in an efficient little bow that's one of the best offenses in the league and one of the best play callers who, with a historically efficient tight end. So he led in yards per target last year amongst tight ends. I believe he was second in yards after contact. So I think that honestly, this is a cheat code pick. So he was number 1 in points per game last year. And I think with Deebo Samuel out of town, those manufactured touches and those short area touches are going to start funneling themselves to Kittle, especially with no Brandon Ayuk on the field. So for me specifically, I'm clicking the button almost every single time if he's available in the 4th round. It's an auto select. I mean, we're burgeoning on Hall of Fame type of ending to his career. But again, tight ends age in reverse dog years. So they only age 0.75 years that a normal human ages or football player ages. So he's just typically, I mean, honestly, he's just entering into his prime. Like all the tight ends except Gronk age very, very gracefully.
Tony Gonzalez.
Yeah, Tony Gonzalez. So we could be looking at another 3 or 4 years of 1,000-yard George Kittle or massive touchdown spike upside George Kittle, in which case, whatever you do with George Kittle in terms of getting him onto your roster, 9 times out of 10, that's going to be the correct play because he's so good. He's tied. His quarterback is now laced and tied to him. He's the highest paid tight end in the NFL. There's no reason to be selling off your shares of George Kittle unless your team is absolutely dog water.
Hey, and you just want to ride until the wheels fall off. And it's funny, tight end premium, we talk about tight end premium a lot, and that helps boosts their values because it is a onesie position. But at the same time, it just kind of feels like the tight ends, they age at a premium. So there's tight end premiums scattered across your leagues. And then the way they age, even though it's a vicious position, there's certain players, if they get to about 30 and they're still in this elite tier, they can just continue on the decline. They can just slow it down so well because even if they lose some of that speed, there's a lot of guile that happens in the route running, in being able to chip on blocking, how to maneuver on the field. You'll even see it. I think you'll see a bounce back from Travis Kelce just because he has so much in the Rolodex from past performance. It may not be all physical at this point in the career, and that's where that position, the tight end position, even though it's physical, can become very cerebral as they age. Now, as we're thinking about these best ball values and Dynasty, how it crosses over, we need to learn more about Dynasty from the Podfather.
Hey, what if I told you there was a Dynasty app where you could get player lifetime values, evaluate trades, including draft picks out to 2028, compare the advanced metrics of two players, look up the sentiment, buy, sell, hold on players? Well, there is a mobile app that has all of that and more called the Dynasty Dominator, and it's $5 in the App Store on Google Play. This is my gift to you, the most affordable Dynasty League domination app available today. And if you already have it, the 2025 class is ready to download. Let's go.
There you have it from the Podfather. Now let's take a look at another crossover, bridging formats, breaking ADP. Jordan Mason, underdog, RB31, goes in round 8, goes near players like Jaden Higgins, Travis Kelce, who we just spoke of, Bo Nix, Justin Fields. Bo Nix was there in your scenario for FFPC. A spot where your team can build can dictate your selection. So really, based on the positions that you have available of those players, Jordan Mason is somebody who you can scaffold if you want to pack on a third or fourth running back at that stage of the draft. I like his touchdown equity and opportunity there in that offense. Over on FFPC, you can get Mason a round later in round 9. I think part of that is the PPR format adjusts and hits Jordan Mason a little bit versus other running backs. But on FFPC, ready for this? Jordan Mason goes ahead of Travis Etienne, Zach Charbonnet, Josh Downs. In the last week, the min pick as early Jordan Mason has gone in round 8, and he's gone as late as round 10. Chev, those players in FFPC, PPR format here, you've got Jordan Mason. Granted, you're trying to build your different team builds, but in a vacuum, Travis Etienne or Jordan Mason?
Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne all day, twice on Sunday. We know that Travis Etienne's at least going to be able to contend for week 1 volume carries. I don't think that there's any world where if something doesn't happen to Aaron Jones, where we're handing all the work over to Jordan Mason. And the reason that I feel like that could happen with Travis Etienne is because he's the perfect marriage between the pass catching of Rachaad White and that explosive ability of Bucky Irving. Now, mind you, last year was not the example that you want to put on film for Travis Etienne, but if you go back to 2023, that first half of the year, he was very explosive. That year, he finishes as the overall RB3. So, yeah, I'm going Travis Etienne pretty easily here.
Love it. And I'm right there with you. How about Zach Charbonnet versus Jordan Mason?
Oh.
Is that more split portfolio?
Yeah, that's gonna be, hey, 10 drafts, I select 5 and 5, mostly because of the fact that both of the guys that we're talking about, them being tied to, they missed time, and it's a commensurate amount of time when you're talking about Aaron Jones's injury history and Ken Walker's injury history. You might even skew more towards the Zach Charbonnet side because Ken Walker has missed so much time over the last couple of years, even though Aaron Jones, you would assume because he's a little bit older, he might be more injury prone. But it's just it's soft tissue stuff. It's never anything that's predictable. So for me, yeah, I'd have to split that one 50-50.
And I think part of it is if you have two locked in running backs, and then you want a third running back that has a little bit of a stability. Jordan Mason may provide that touchdown stability for you. If you've gone 0 RB, you may go more towards Zach Charbonnet, who can have that asymmetrical upside in the event that Ken Walker is, Ken Walker is out of the picture. We don't want that for Ken Walker. Granted, I've been splitting my share a little bit more evenly lately by getting more Ken Walker, but I love the scenario upside that Charbonnet could present. Now on FastDraft, pick 89, late round 8. So that has been the best value that you can find for Jordan Mason. To a degree, FFPC presents a little bit better value in round 9. But granted, that's really just an adjustment for the scoring because there's less of that pass catching appeal due to the Aaron Jones role. And we haven't really seen the pass catching role from Jordan Mason. Now in Dynasty, this is just like a mild buy for me. If you need a flex running back for some of that touchdown equity, there's a chance he usurps Aaron Jones and takes over the whole backfield. But that would be via injury. And then that would open up getting the majority of carries. Now, here's somebody who should be a bounce back candidate. I like this player that you selected. Chev, tell us about Dak Prescott.
So the thing with Dak is that every other year, we get a massive performance. If you go back to 2021, he's coming off of the injury where he's slamming his foot on the ground and trying to set his ankle back into place. And then 2023, we got monster Dak Prescott year that just kind of after kicking off to a slow start, he finishes with 4,536. And now in 2025, we get the revamped O-line. Yes, they did lose future Hall of Famer Zach Martin, but they've upgraded. They spent the 12th overall pick on Tyler Booker. Even though they had designs on trying to get Tet McMillan with that 12th pick, it's well documented now. They did add George Pickens to the offense. So for me, I'm looking at Dak Prescott as an arbitrage play on the guys like Baker Mayfield who have been steamed up after really, really strong years. I view those guys as they all have a very similar ceiling. And so if I'm going to take a shot and I don't have one of those stud quarterbacks at the very beginning of my draft, Dak Prescott's going round 10 in underdog drafts. So he's going around Jared Goff, Jonnu Smith, Drake May. Then we go over to FFPC, pick 91. Okay. Pick 91. 8th round pick, goes as late as 10th round pick at pick 120. I can't bring myself to leave drafts without Dak Prescott. And now we're talking Rabbit, we're talking FastDraft that just launched. Dak Prescott's an 11th round pick. We're talking about a guy with QB3 overall upside. Yes. 21 and a half, 22 points a game. Lock that in. That's an elite ceiling. What Baker Mayfield just gave you, Dak Prescott can do and has arguably the weapons to do so. So the reason that I put him on here is because one, we're following the trend, which seems ridiculous, but we have two different sets of alternating years to go off of. And I'm only kidding a little bit, but we've got a healthy Dak Prescott. He's got the contract. They don't really have anybody that I'm afraid of in the passing game, in the run game with Javonte Williams, Phil Maffa, Miles Sanders, and Jaden Blue. I'm not the least bit afraid of anything that those guys have to offer. So that being said, the Cowboys might air it out at 600 times this year. Give me the Cowboys weapons. Give me Dak Prescott. I'm buying in Dynasty, currently going FFD ADP 602, quarterback 21 off the board. In any sort of super flex, this is a fine quarterback 2 play for me. What do you think about
just to clear, that's 6th round super flex?
Yeah.
That's theft. That's stealing. And it's just a matter of taking advantage of market sentiment of recency bias. Oh my God, man. Yes. You could get him as your 3rd quarterback against the rest of the league. I would yank him as a 3rd quarterback against the rest of the league if somebody didn't take him. That's how good he is. And he's just in his early 30s now. We're talking about tight end age. QBs, they could play till 40 these days, especially if they get more to being pocket passers and you don't have that aggression in the run game from Dak Prescott. So I like a lot what you said. One question, though, on Underdog, though, you had mentioned Drake May. Is it Drake Maye or Dak Prescott? Who do you think who's going to be the better player this year? Who has more upside? Are they going to be the same thing? Is that the same answer?
No. Okay. So there's an important thing here. And the problem that we have is the fact that Drake Maye represents massive upside. He had a 10% scramble rate. He averaged 7.5 yards a carry. We think that offense with Josh McDaniels is going to take another step forward and be, not bottom 5, but closer to middle of the pack. Most likely they've upgraded the offensive line. So Dak Prescott represents safety. We know what you're going to get if Dak Prescott plays a full season. It's somewhere around 4,000 yards. It's somewhere around 30 touchdowns. So if you've built your team to where you can handle the variance of a quarterback who's going to run his way into winning weeks, I would probably go a little bit more with the Drake Maye, because he's going to offer the rushing upside. If you want to solidify just week in, week out, he's probably going to, if you select 3 quarterbacks in a custodian build, Dak Prescott's name is going to get rung. The bell's going to get rung on Dak Prescott more times than the other 2 quarterbacks. Then yeah. So honestly, with the way that this is structured, you could punt quarterback, in my opinion, and then select Dak Prescott in the 10th and maybe Drake Maye in the 11th.
I like that. And what's cool, talking about crossover, right? In these Superflex, in these tournaments, you can get Drake Maye much sooner than Dak Prescott. Over in the single quarterback on Underdog, they're neck and neck, Prescott and Maye. So you can take advantage in a Dynasty startup and get Maye earlier, and then go and get Prescott there in round 6. What does Drake Maye go now? Round 2 in a startup?
2-7, 2-6.
So there you have it, a 4-round gap discrepancy, whereas in the 1 quarterback format, they're just kind of in the same spot. So I think that could tell you that you might be able to get a little bit more exposure to some Drake Maye in the 1 quarterback where they're even, but at the same time, take advantage, get both, and have a bird in both hands, and have Dak Prescott and Drake Maye on your Dynasty squads for Superflex. So I love that. Good insight there, Chev. My last player that I have is Zay Flowers on Underdog, wide receiver 30 in round 5. To me, he should be a round 7 player. 0.5 PPR. I don't love it at all. On FFPC, a little bit more appropriately priced. Round 5 there. This is somewhat acceptable for that PPR format. Still rich. Goes ahead of Jameson Williams, who I know you won't like that, Cortland Sutton, and George Pickens. You alluded to how much the Cowboys will throw next year. And then there's Jalen Waddle. I know your team never Jalen Waddle, but those are the receivers in that range on FFPC. The minimum pick, earliest. Somebody got aggressive in the last week on FFPC at the 4-5 turn with Zay Flowers and picked in round 6 in the last week. That's the maximum pick. That's the latest he's gone. On FastDraft, round 6, I think that's one of the best values in the Rabbit. Second best value, though, to me is FFPC due to that PPR format. The worst spot to go and select Zay Flowers, really, he's just being floated in inflation. People talk about, hey, inflation is bad. Well, inflation is bad for Zay Flowers being levered to Lamar Jackson, because Lamar Jackson is the only thing propping him up. So in Dynasty, I've talked about it on our sell shows on Trade Gods. I'm selling way overpriced in Redraft. Tells me there's trades to be had, though, in Dynasty. I've got some mixed reviews from people saying they can't deal him. They have dealt him. I would do something as creative as a pick swap. Can I get a first for Flowers and a second? Like just shift just a little bit, get real close. I did see somebody on X post. They got a first and a second in 2026. So there's some people sleep at the wheel. Love them some Zay Flowers. So it's your mileage may vary, but go out there and try and sell some Zay Flowers, see what you can get. Don't just give him up for anything. I just don't like a lot of his price points. FFPC with the PPR might be the best spot. Chev, is it correct? Zay Flowers, Jameson Williams, how much more of a gap should there be than them being neck and neck at ADP? Should it be a round and a half?
I feel like maybe Zay Flowers. It's incorrect, but I think maybe Zay Flowers should be at the back end of the round, whereas Jameson Williams should be at the front.
Okay.
I don't feel like there's a giant. So best ball would probably be my preferred method to own Zay Flowers or to roster Zay Flowers, because you don't have to do, a bunch of Watergate research to figure out whether or not the matchup's good and he's going to score a long touchdown. The problem that I have with Zay Flowers is that he's the 4th or 5th best passing game option when they get into the low red zone. Hell, when they get in the red zone period, he's the 4th or 5th option. So we're capping a ceiling at 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. Unless we're going to get 140 targets, that's likely going to be 80 catches for 1,000 yards. And
you said likely, not bad omen.
You see it. But in all seriousness, I really do think that best ball is my preferred method to own and roster Zay Flowers. I would prefer Jameson Williams just because I've seen, last year he tied for the lead in 50-yard plays, and he was tied for 3rd in 40-yard catches. So I think that Zay Flowers should be on the back end of the 5th round, and maybe Jameson Williams scoots up maybe to the end of the 4th.
I like it a lot. Here's the last player that you have for the crossover. Thank you for tuning in. Like, comment, share, subscribe. It helps us. It helps you, right? Cedric Tillman. Tell us about Cedric Tillman, Chev.
So we got the prototypical X receiver build. He's 6'3", he's 215. He gets 3rd round draft capital, if I'm not mistaken, goes to the Browns. Now he doesn't really have a role because Amari Cooper is occupying that spot. But the minute that he did get a role, the first time he played 70% or more of the snaps, he immediately comes out and he's 12 targets, 8 for 81. He's the wide receiver 1 last year from week 7 and 9. Now we're talking about a guy going in round 13. Here are the names, okay? Underdog, best ball, ADP, right now, today, right now. You go get in one of those drafts. You get in round 13. You see the Cedric Tillman guy that I'm telling you about. And then there's Josh Palmer. Cool. Tyler Algier. Cool. Maybe if something happens to Bijan.
Yep.
Austin Eckler, who apparently is a cut candidate. That's, and team Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, you won't hear anybody caping harder on the internet for 7th round running backs than this guy, old Chev Dewar-Sanders over here. And then Bryce Young. So in the single quarterback format, you can wait a little bit longer to select a quarterback than Bryce Young. Personally, I like Bryce Young this year, but not right now. So then in FFPC, round 14, he's going off the board. Rico Dowdle, Braylon Allen, Chico Conquo. Give me Cedric Tillman easily. Rabbit, I think I might have become the first person to select Cedric Tillman in a Rabbit draft today. I'm kidding. I don't think I'm the first person. I just think that I'm one of the chosen. So he's going off the board at 15-9. And then, basically, he's the wide receiver 55 in Dynasty right now. And we talked before the show, and I said, hey, man, you remember way back when, because we've been friends for a few years now, communicating. This is the first time we're doing a show together. Well, we're doing shows together and stuff now, but before that, there was Discord. And in the Discord, we were talking about Nico. I used to talk about Nico Collins all the time. And so I think
that's when we were just in the talking stage, Chef.
Yeah, we were just in the talking stage.
You can tell people about that now.
Yeah. So I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but I used to talk about Nico Collins a lot. And I think that Cedric Tillman is on that same type of trajectory. I think he's that type of talent. I think he's just that. He's that damn good. And we're going to look back into 2025 at the 2025 season, and it's going to be the age of Cedric Tillman, and I'm here for it.
Man, I love it. And then he had the 3-week stretch where it's receiver 3, 10, 12.
Yep. And
the past performance indicative of future. Just because something happens in the past doesn't mean it'll happen in the future. But at the same time, Dwayne McFarland always talks about the best indicator of future fantasy performance is past fantasy football performance. So those two things can run parallel and be correct. I think really the main outlook is the fact that because we've seen it and we know it can be done. We know it can be done in the future. But my hesitance is part of what we talked pre-show. Joe Flacco, if it was him, I trust it. It could be Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders. But this schedule is just a mess. The first couple games of the season,
so bad.
ready?
The
first 6 games, ready? The Bengals at home, the Ravens, woof. And these could be closer games, but probably losses, right? Because, hey, it's a division. But then 3 straight NFC North matchups. The Packers, the Lions, the Vikings. And then week 6, after coming out of maybe a 1-4 start, maybe 0-5, you get the Pittsburgh Steelers, who they're just going to be tough. As much as you want to think, hey, that could be a closer game, it's looking real rough, real early. I trust Joku and Judy. For whatever reason, I can block it out, have tunnel vision. I have been clicking on Cedric Tillman, though, at his price point on Underdog. Round 13, great pick. Of those players you named with Palmer, Algier, Eckler, Young, I like Tyler Algier just when I'm zooming in on, okay, I don't have Bijan, I'll go opposite and grab Algier. And then Bryce Young, I love the Carolina Panthers this year. I love building them so much. If it's JT Sanders, Coker, Tet McMillan, maybe the player that I'm most out on or just not clicking the most in best ball is Chuba Hubbard. I got a decent amount of him in some Dynasty. So I love that, Chev. Great takeaway, great insights. Really fun to see how these different price points can inform what we got going on, where you can see some discrepancies, but also maybe some consistencies. So great having the show with you today, Chev. And this has been we will see you next week.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to PlayerProfiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.